The Neon Wilderness, 24 short stories on the dark reality of Chicago's West Side. Degenerate gamblers, hard drinkers, dope fiends, killers, and crooked cops leap off the page. The Neon Wilderness by Nelson Algren, a must-read book for 1947.
The stories in the Neon Wilderness just absolutely knocked me out.
Pimps, hookers, junkies. There hadn't been too much attention paid to drugs or to junkies at that time.
There was a reality in it that was really gripping. I recognized these people, and here was the guy who was the poet of these people.
What he represented was a kind of stark, no bullshit, I'm going to tell it like it is storyline, and a kind of reality of Chicago and the times that had a kind of working class point of view.
The captain didn't always have a heart to point the unwavering finger of guilt. He saw the dispossessed ones come and go, the twisted and the stunted ones, and felt equally indifferent to all. You couldn't drown them because they weren't cats, and when you drove them off, they found their way back home anyhow.
He identified that sort of bemused working class that was kind of caught between the gears. And it's not so pretty, but that's where the beauty lay for him.
I found out that Algren had been banned in some bookstores in Chicago, and Crocs and Montanos were very emphatic about the fact that they did not sell Algren. They were almost proud of that. There was something almost religious, about it. And it wasn't available in the Chicago Public Library because of the actions of Polish Roman Catholic Legion. The books, are very grim about this Polish immigrant population and how they're just downtrodden, and they're sort of kept almost prisoner-like by their politicians or the police. The immigrants I knew, these girls just off the boat working in these bars, they barely spoke English. And they were so glad to be in America, working 15 hours a day.
To my feeling, the true life of Chicago has always been on the other side of the billboards.
He was one of the first to really reveal the truth of the underclass of America, the people that didn't make it in the American dream.
What is usually considered Chicago's contributions to the arts, say the Buckingham Fountain and our theater. If you go the other side of the billboards, if you ask the girls who wait on trade in the 5 and dime stores or the men who drive the laundry trucks, you won't find 1 in 100 who's ever seen a play.
Algren's fiction always deals with people who otherwise would not have a voice. So his characters and his plots and his settings are always these marginalized people, these outsiders who otherwise would not be represented in our conversation about what America is.
That's why I always feel that the true Chicago lies downward, and that the true voice of the city is the voice of the inarticulate.
I never went voluntarily into the world of pimps and thieves and wandering people. I was pushed into it.
Nelson's family life, although he came from the South Side, it was middle class. And his father was fairly successful. It certainly wasn't that he was born on the rough side. So what drew him to the underside of life, is it temperament?
Dean Murphy of the School of Journalism at the University of Illinois assured me newspapers wanted young men like myself so badly that I'd be having to choose between bids for my services between the New York Times, St. Louis Dispatch, and the Chicago Tribune. That was 1929.
Really, you have to think about what was happening in the United States during those formative years.
I went to a school of journalism, and when I got out in 1931, I would have been very, very happy to have a little desk with a newspaper and a magazine or any sort of a job.
But when he couldn't get a job, and he went on the road, he became a bindle stiff, so to speak. became part of that hobo world.
I was bumming through Texas in 1932. From the Rio Grande Valley, I wrote a letter. Murray urged me to make a short story of it. It was published in August of 1933. My first short story was called So Help Me. I hitchhiked to Alpine, Texas, and there was a college in that town, so I picked up a Royal Upright and caught the next freight that was passing through. In Sanderson, the sheriff pinched me and threw me in the clink to wait for trial in the spring. My sentence was 2 years at Huntsville. If I promised to get out of the state within 24 hours, I would be allowed to serve the sentence in absentia.
He'd played it straight. He'd gone to school. He got a college degree. And the next thing he knew, he was in jail for stealing a typewriter in Texas. He got to see firsthand, whether he wanted to or not, the way some people had to live.
The WPA served to humanize people who had been partly dehumanized, and it also put me in touch with people who were politically alert.
Work pays America. Each community had to plan jobs which would utilize and preserve their skill and training. And above all, the work must be a real contribution to the welfare of the community.
We interviewed bar patrons, prostitutes in the sleaziest Skid Row district of Chicago, in bars which had royal or very grandiose royal names. In the King's Palace at a certain festive hour, it was called the Cuckoo Hour. And bartenders would go about shouting cuckoo, and you could get another shot of whiskey for a penny. My work there revealed a new way of writing for me. I was in the Army in 1944 at the tail end of Battle of the Bulge. I knew Hitler had to be beaten. I ended the war as a private, which was not bad since I started as a private. My medical outfit went around, and if we saw any infantryman bleeding, we brought him in. My total preoccupation was divided between gambling and getting wine and getting out around the countryside. In Marseille, I used to go to a pizza joint with this load of black market stuff, cigarettes, Eisenhower jackets. The reason I was in the black market was because I didn't have enough money to gamble.
Across the microphone is the author of this compassionate tale, short story from the collection of short stories, The Neon Wilderness, by the distinguished American novelist Nelson Algren.
He comes from one of the back streets of one of these old world towns. He's one of these bedless and loveless and friendless tavern cats that do find rest and friendship and love in the bottom of a whiskey glass. It's usually down at the corner. Usually the tavern is called something like the Friendly Hour, the Happy Hour, or a Carefree Corner.
Every corner had the neighborhood tavern. I grew up in those places. I spent my whole 4-year-old year in a tavern. Families, peanuts on the floor, guys bitching about the wives, playing pinball.
So he liked going into these taverns and, having a short beer and listening to stories and getting the voices down.
The doomed outsider for Algren is where we discover the essential American character, because they're the people, he says, who are living life all the way because they have no choice.
When I used the line of one of the greatest I wonders, Walt Whitman, I feel I am of them. I belong to those convicts and prostitutes myself. Henceforth, I will not deny them, for how can I deny myself?
He didn't look at them through a microscope. He embraced them. He put his arms around them, and it was a very different feeling entirely.
That thing for him was to go into the lower depths. The prostitute,
the junkie, they are the people that he's going to honor.
The Alcoholics Anonymous can't cure him, and the church can't save him. He's a man, in this story, he's a man who lives in a tenement, and his life is lived out between the big bells of the churches that ring in the morning and the big bells that put people to bed at night. He's trying to find out who he is, but he doesn't know how except at the bottom of that glass.
I come from drunks and drug addicts and wife beaters and crazy people because they grew up in this industrial class that gave them no hope. And he captures the beauty in that class without judgment.
He thought of himself as a reporter with people of his own kind. People who, but for dint of a bit of talent or but for a good break in life, he might have been there with them.
They fought to fill the emptiness of their lives as they filled their empty glasses. They fought, not because the liquor was in them, but because it did not fill them enough. Because there wasn't enough whiskey on South State to fill the emptiness of a single lost man of them all. The twisted, bitter taste of defeat parched their throats, and they blamed it on Brother B's pretzels.
Algren identified the beauty in that sort of commitment. And it's different types of commitment. Like I had a grandfather, his commitment, right, is to sit at that bar all fucking day. He's gonna sit at that bar all goddamn day. That's a different kind of commitment. And that's not, glamorized film noir version. That's some guy who's damaged in the brain, sitting there all fucking day. And you know why he's sitting there all day? Because he doesn't want to go home and beat his wife.
A right uppercut is a sucker punch. If you don't time it exactly, you leave yourself open to your opponent's cross or jab. You have to think ahead to land it, anticipate your man's moves. It's a good punch to throw at an opponent who fights a little lower than you.
But he idolized boxers from the start. If he could have been anything in life, he would have been a boxer.
He was very physical, and he used to go to the gym. He used to like to hit the heavy bag. The boxing that he wrote about, down and outers, hanging out at the Marigold Arena, and then he could identify with the club fighter. He wasn't really writing about the elite in the sport, about the higher levels of the sport.
Because the characters he writes about are from the underside, are from the opposition. He thought that writers were like boxers.
It's a combination of authentic seeming dialogue between the fighters and their trainers and managers, and vivid moments in the ring, frequently funny.
I went for the schoolboy giant's body, right to the heart, left to the solar plexus. He lowered his head, his arms crossed level with his heart, and with my right glove almost touching the floor, I pivoted in the ball of my left foot and brought it up. He pitched face forward as if he'd been sculled with a crowbar.
He has a kind of a phantasmagoric view of the fight game, where things seem to be verging on hallucination, which I'm sure they do in the ring.
Algren can hit with both hands and move around, and he will kill you if you are not awfully careful. Mr. Algren, boy, you were good.
Well, there was a sort of a long, narrow living room. It was so crowded, not only with furniture, but with all the collages that he made and pictures that he put up and newspaper clippings. So that you really felt like you were going into a scrapbook when you walked in the house.
The house was a testament to who Nelson was. All over the house were these large collages that he did and hung up. They were behind glass. They were huge. They could be 4 or 5 feet high and maybe 2 or 3 feet wide. And they were behind glass, and they would be letters from de Beauvoir, pictures from girly magazines, army things, stuff, mementos that he just put together in a, in an artistic way.
They were very unique.
And there'd be fans, so that in the summer when the fans were on, everything would rattle, and all the pages would flip back and forth, and sometimes the pictures would fall down.
Psychologically, Nelson is totally broke down. He
He's been walking the streets of Old Town all afternoon, looking at the faces of the yuppies and the buppies. It's reality, but it's a reality that is withering away from him.
I think if he had done only that, he might have been known as, a very interesting artist.
Christmas lights, which I think they were part of everyday life for him, they were the kind that were big, each light was like a big bulb, and they were strung up around.
I expected writers to live a little more elegantly than he did, and living in total disorder.
Books and boxes, piles of books.
His bathtub was filled with dusty old magazines and books and newspapers. It was like going to visit the Wizard of Oz. It was so funny.
So he had a housekeeper, Mrs. Sullivan, and he had a crush on her, actually. Supposedly, the legend goes, he actually proposed to her. She was kind of a plump, jolly woman of a certain age, and he was just crazy about her. I think that was after Simone de Beauvoir.
Simone de Beauvoir.
For Simone de Beauvoir.
Simone de Beauvoir.
De Beauvoir, de Beauvoir, de Beauvoir.
His beloved Frenchie, as he called her.
His affair with Simone de Beauvoir in the late 40s.
This is the news of the world with breaking news from Paris. Who are Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, and why is the intellectual world of Europe all abuzz? This striking couple is well known as the literary leaders of French post-war intellectual thought. Sartre is the king of existentialism. De Beauvoir is his feminist queen. They are outrageously unconventional in their sexual and social thought, hosting a veritable who's who of statesmen, scholars, and starlets. Recently, things have changed. Simone has found herself an American lover. While in Chicago in 1947, a mutual friend suggested that de Beauvoir call upon the bard of the slums, writer Nelson Algren. Friends say that fireworks exploded and they have been romantically linked ever since.
Were you really in love with Simone de Beauvoir?
Well, I remember the lady. She was a French school teacher. It was so long ago, I can't remember. I was attracted to her. I must have been. We traveled together.
There were two photos on the wall that were signed to him. One turned out to be Jean-Paul Sartre. The other picture was of Simone de Beauvoir, who for many years lived with Sartre. And of course, Nelson had a long relationship with de Beauvoir while she was still with Sartre.
Happened upon a strange creature, apparently of foreign extraction, running aimlessly down Wabansia Avenue. Took her upstairs with the intention of phoning police, but the hour was late and she obviously needed sleep and a warm meal. I'm too kind for my own good.
He took her around to, the police lineup and the bars on West Madison. What she liked about Algren, he was the voice of the underclass.
Later that year, Simone returned to Chicago.
And all they did was drink and make love.
He gave her a ring.
She called him her husband.
For me, that is about Algren wanting to be with a woman who was his intellectual equal. Despite the distances, despite all the other divisions between them, the language barrier, the philosophical differences they had, is really a fascinating story.
Nelson, once more the cab drove away and I saw your face for the last time. And I remembered everything. It is our love, our life. I still feel your chest so warm against my breast. I can hardly believe I have to write to you again.
I knew she was in love with him because she laughed at all his jokes and didn't understand one.
The first real man to give her an orgasm.
Nelson often had his sexual relationships with Simone de Beauvoir in my bookstore. Algren loved the low life, and she loved low sex.
She was a very attractive woman, yeah.
So I said, Nelson, what was it with Simone? What was this thing about? And he looked at me and said, I never understood a word she said.
I think it's always wise to avoid playing cards with anybody called Doc.
All Nelson's old friends would tell you he was the lousiest gambler. He couldn't play poker for love of money, and yet he always gambled.
He claimed to be a great poker player, but from everything I have heard from all of his friends, he wasn't that good.
In poker games, for example, at his house at Evergreen, he would have the green eye shade like a gambler, you see. But he's a lousy poker player because he was too romantic.
Nelson should really not have been hosting these poker games because he lost a great deal of money. And as I look back on it, it was just bad luck. And it always amazed me that he wrote so well about poker in fiction, as The Man with the Golden Arm is, of course, about, a poker dealer.
So I just wanted to get the feeling of the center of his world, which was Damon and Division. And there was a gambling den in the basement of that bar, and I wanted a picture of him playing poker with some of his friends. And he brought along a guy from St. Louis who became Frankie Machine in The Man with the Golden Arm. He was a dealer of cards and a drug dealer and an addict, a heroin addict.
Man with the Golden Arm described a time and place in Chicago. And there was a world of night people, hustlers, and addicts.
And he became fascinated by the world of the junkie and how that whole thing operated. Because it was a secret life. It was an underground kind of existence.
He was describing the world I lived in.
Well, you have to belong. I mean, it's a life and death matter. I asked an addict once who really didn't need to use heroin, who used it anyhow. He said, well, you have to belong. He said, you don't know what it's like when you don't belong to anything. But if you can go in a room and have other addicts greet you as one of their own, then you're somebody.
Some great portions of my life have been spent as a drug addict. And so I studied other people that were drug addicts and then studied what people wrote about drug addicts. And all these things led me to Nelson Algren.
Between 7 and 11, it's quiet on the street. The cats asleep in the strange light sleep of their drugs. They have an hour now of neither fever dreams nor fear. I think he's zeroing in on that point right at the end of your high. Right when your high is about over and you're actually sleeping, and then you're going to wake up, or you're going to be woken up by the monkey.
I first heard that phrase, monkey in my back, from a 30-year-old addict. He was it was early in the morning, and he was, jumping from one bar to another, and I didn't, I was tired of it. And I said, well, why don't you just forget it or something? He said, you don't know what it's like to have a 30-pound monkey on your back. It's all in the wrist with a deck or a cue. And Frankie Machine had the touch. He had the touch and a golden arm.
He has the vernacular voice, that sense of the ear for how people really talk. Of all our great realist writers, going back to Twain, actually.
Hold up, arm, he would plead, kissing his rosary once for help with a fader, sweating it out, and zing, there it was.
And it's as highly wrought, as artistically written as any great modernist novel by someone like Faulkner or Hemingway or Fitzgerald. I've seen the manuscripts of this book. He rewrote it to death.
For it's all in the wrist with a deck or a cue. And if he crapped out when we thought he was due, it must have been that the dice were rolled. For he had the touch and his arm was gold.
To my old friend Nelson, who I believe is still the best writer of good prose in the USA, Dick.
In 1949, when I first met Nelson, came to his little $10-a-month apartment on Wabansia. There he was at his desk. He was about to receive the very first National Book Award given for the book The Man with the Golden Arm, for the best of some 1,500 novels written in that particular year.
When Man with the Golden Arm comes out, you couldn't be more successful as a mainstream novelist, being given the first National Book Award by Eleanor Roosevelt. I think he loved these characters that he wrote about because they They represented real, breathing humanity to him. They were not dry, paper thin. They were flesh and blood.
Nelson was never disdainful of these kinds of people. These were his people. He never felt or thought of himself as a voyeur. Nelson was the star of the scene. And he got invited, to every fancy Lakeshore Drive party so they could see this man that wrote about the seedy side of Chicago, but also was acclaimed by Sartre and all these other people.
We were all going to a social event, and he says to me, pointing to the rope he has, holding up his pants, "Is this all right? I couldn't find a belt." It's Nelson, so a rope is all right.
I think he did a lot of that just to remind himself and to maintain that sense of himself as an outsider.
Maybe he put us on a little bit too. His game of being the common man.
And if you grew up in my lifetime in America, you knew this movie. This was considered a hard movie, a hardcore movie. And, Frank Sinatra did this stellar job of, writhing on the floor in agony. And
when the time came for the making of his Golden Arm into a movie, he, so to speak, got screwed.
But mostly, he didn't like Preminger.
He thought it was, Preminger was pretentious.
So as soon as I got into the car, he said, "How come you know such terrible people you write about?" The book is written out of respect for these people. I respected them. Preminger had contempt for him. I sensed this right away, and I was on the side of these people.
What Preminger wanted was a treatment from Nelson first. And Algren thought that the treatment was implicit in his book. That was the treatment. So Nelson went to see some movie, and I think it was pseudo-pornographic or something. But he went back and he wrote a treatment of that. He wrote a treatment of this stupid movie that had nothing to do with the man with the golden arm, and typed it and turned it in to Preminger.
He wanted a serious treatment, and I gave him a joke. He had showed me what he thought of me and my people. I showed him what I thought of him and his people.
I remember this vividly. He said that Preminger stood up at his desk, clicked his heels together, extended his hand, and said to Nelson, "Thank you for letting me meet an interesting person," and dismissed him at that point.
Preminger was paying him $600 a week and thinking that because he paid him that kind of money, he could sign off on anything, but he couldn't own Algren.
As I heard it, he'd been paid $20,000, period, with no percentage or what, which is really not an intelligent deal to make. And the picture became a big picture.
I remember one night on Lawrence, we were going by the big theater where his movie was playing, and he said, "I ain't gonna pose." That's the first time he'd ever said that to me. And I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "I had nothing to do with that fucking movie."
What he would say about Man with the Golden Arm was, "I made a movie about the problems of drug addiction. Preminger made a movie to show that those problems didn't exist anymore."
What Hollywood does to stories like that is shave all the edges off, and the stories don't work without the edges.
One of the things that people forget about Algren is that this idea of heroin addiction in the white Polish neighborhoods was not thought about in the rest of the country. It was thought if there was heroin addiction at all, maybe a couple of writers or artists and a lot of black people. He didn't think it caught the grit of it, but I don't think he understood for the rest of the country it really was a breakthrough notion.
And Man with the Golden Arm was a success, and yet It could have been a much greater movie if Nelson had been appreciated.
May 28th, 1948. Afternoon in the jungle. Beautiful night with bright fireflies. Morning in the ruins.
You climbed the great temple without figuring how you'd ever get down again. Sat in the hot, sunny Yucatan, feeling the same sun, and nothing so much changed in 1,000 years.
Night in the steam bath.
I was glad that you'd brought me here.
Simone she was like the Medal of Honor or the greatest National Book Award, or she was finally the highest literary award that anybody can get.
What she did do, so far as my recollection goes, she opened up Europe for me.
When Simone de Beauvoir came along and introduced him to a kind of culture he knew existed, but could never imagine himself being part of.
In 1948, they canoodled in Algren's beach house.
They also wrote their seminal books,
The Man with a Golden Arm
and The Second Sex.
It was on Algren that de Beauvoir first tried her thesis on the oppression of women that became The Second Sex. Nelson said, she feels woman is something between man and eunuch. He shrugged, but she's quite a lady in the sack.
What a view as we fly quickly, comfortably, and safely to Chicago. And if we're nice, we can even say hi to the pilots. Before you know it, we're off to see the sights. Whether it's non-stop shopping, breathtaking architecture, or beautiful museums.
The city is a watcher. The city sees it all. Blackmail, bribery, extortion, let me have 2 10s for 5.
The early success he had, winning the first National Book Award, made him as big a literary celebrity as this town had at the time.
It's hard to mention Algren's name without putting Chicago in the same sentence.
And my own Chicago begins where the boulevards and the skyscrapers and the Willers Inn. It begins where you have to walk upstairs, where there are no elevators and there isn't any receptionist. Although that's the Chicago I know. And it's also a city of old world villages. It isn't one big solid town. It's little Athens and little Warsaw. It's San Juan and Belfast.
When I read his work, it takes me immediately back to my root here in the city. It's so hard to explain to people who aren't from Chicago. They just don't get it. There's a sort of bare-knuckle violence in everything. In everything. And you can never escape that sense that just around the corner, somebody's waiting to beat the fuck out of your face. He captured that.
Especially in City on the Make, I think there has been no more definitive prose poem filled with love and affection and hate and disgust.
It used to be a writer's town. It's always been a fighter's town. For writers and fighters and furtive torpedoes, cat bandits, baggage thieves, hallway headlockers on the prowl, baby photographers, and stylish Connaroos. This is the spot that is always most convenient, being so centrally located for settling ancestral grudges. Whether the power's in a .38, a typewriter ribbon, or a pair of 6-ouncers, the place has grown great on bone-deep grudges of writers and fighters and furtive torpedoes.
It's a book that just captures Chicago like none other, in prose that you can just read like poetry. But the poetry is about reality, it's about history. And as he says, loving Chicago is like loving a woman with a broken nose. You may well find lovelier lovelies, but never a lovely so real.
Wheeling around the loop of the lake, coming at Chicago from east and south, the land by night lies under a battle-colored sky.
Chicago was the picture he painted. The color is incredible. Green bias cloth, battle-colored skies, cold pavement-colored eyes. That's more than just a color. That's an accusation.
Algren's power, in terms of what he's remembered as, is someone who really was able to take Chicago and give it a face that everybody else ran away from. The business community didn't want to talk about what he was talking about. The immigrant community didn't want to deal with the realities of what was happening here.
And Algren would just nod and say, yeah, and look over here on the other side of the river, and look at the tenements, and look at the L train, and look at the spaces under the L. As he says again in City on the Make, every day is D-Day under the L.
We seem to think we ought to be immune lest somebody should take a picture of the stockyards or drug addiction. We're not fooling anybody. And nobody believes in the myth that the local press puts out that by hanging art prints in one of the subways that we've beaten the slum situation.
He had written a story about stupors, it's called. Stupors are people who are great psychologists who watch people who think they've lost at the track. They tear their tickets up, throw it away. They pick up these tickets and piece them together, and very often there's a win or a third place that they never knew of, and they make a living like that.
Apparently he'd won some at the horses, lost some.
Dear Phil, I just won the Derby. $5 across, off at 30-1, and there's a picture of a jockey and a rider, and then inside he's got his computations of how much money he won.
Popcorn Bummy was off at 11-1. He broke in front of the field, held a 3-length lead into the turn for home, and was so far in front of the wire that the other horses thought he'd run off and hid somewhere.
Yeah, I remember the days at the races. They were good. Sometimes he'd make some money before we'd go. Like the editors of the Tribune would interview him or pay him to write some book reviews. But he really knew his way around. He would bet too much money, but often he would win, and then he wanted us to drink cognac. I mean, this is in the afternoon. I thought, oh, God, keep me on my feet.
He could ride, I give him that. If he saw a hole he could get a horse's nose through, he'd pull the whole horse through it, and he could make a hole in the wind.
He really was a man of leisure. Very little income, but a lot of leisure.
I don't know of any writer who doesn't think of themselves as a boxer. They're either boxers or baseball players. The image you get, my own image of myself is that I'm playing deep first base.
When he was writing about baseball, he focused on the Black Sox scandal.
Something wasn't right, and thousands mourned the proof that baseball wasn't fully honest.
Algren, I think, understood not only the guys a little bit, although I don't think he knew any of them very well, but he understood what they meant to people. He understood that these guys were iconic in their day and tragic. He realized here's another bunch of characters who are not the masters of their own fate. I remember fairly early on reading his epic poem about the Black Sox, and that led me to Elliot Azanoff's book, 8 Men Out, which eventually I wrote into a screenplay, and then 11 years later got to make into a movie.
I say they're the best, Huey. Best ever.
Time will tell, kid. Time will tell.
Although they may have thought that they were pulling one over on the establishment or Comiskey or whatever by throwing the World Series, they did such a bad job of it.
The man in deep left field, with the uniform muddied at the knees, with the shadows of 50 seasons behind him, isn't who you think it is. For Shoeless Joe is gone, long gone, with a long yellow grass blade stuck between his teeth and a lucky hairpin in his hip pocket.
He told me he was on a long chain to the typewriter.
He talked about his own work a lot and how hard it was to be a good writer and how hard it was for him and how much time it took him. And he always was working. If he wasn't writing, he was reading.
I think I wake up in the morning to write the same way as somebody, as a chicken wakes up, he's going to peck out in the yard.
But not everybody does this. Why do you do it?
I do it because I'm modified that way. I do this because I have to do something. I'm awake.
What you see in his writing is he's a savant. And most savants show off. Like, look at the 4-year-old playing Chopin. He wasn't the 4-year-old playing Chopin. He was the savant who decided to write very plain and simple.
Well, he had a fabulous ear for the way people talked. If you read his dialogue, it's exactly authentic. He was a natural. You don't learn how to write like that.
A winter of a single wind has tattered the old station ad that once promised lessons in the waltz by the waltz king of the merry gardens. Its tatters seem less merry now. Waltz king and waltzers alike are gone. Gone with a 12th Street dandy with cap tips for love in Garfield Park, who stepped off here beside the Monday morning salesgirl, her lashes still tinted by Sunday's mascara.
He wrote so beautifully. There's this poetic drift that runs all through his writing. So he wrote as an artist, writing about these people.
I prefer a man with genuineness of feeling, and you find genuineness of feeling often among inarticulate people. It seems to me the whole history of our best writers has been a constant search for that genuineness of feeling.
And so that combination of the subject matter, the people he wrote about, the lives he wrote about, and the language that he used to get there was really unique. There wasn't anyone around like him.
It's never wise to eat at any place called Mom's.
The more dogmatic and stupider people got around him, the funnier Nelson got.
He was one of the funniest people I've ever been around. His humor was sardonic and cutting and right on.
Nelson used to go to the Second City, this improvisational theater. Nelson would go on stage during a scene and sweep the floor. He would just walk by sweeping the floor or doing small parts. He loved to do that. There was a lot of ham in Nelson.
Mr. Algren! Wait, I just have one question! Mr. Algren, I have just one question for you.
He took me out to a Mexican restaurant once. This was like a big deal. So it was a nice place. You know, the mariachi bands, how they come around and they play at your table? Well, Algren was the first guy I knew who paid the band to go away. And I thought, this is really cool. You know, I mean, who pays a band to leave? He gives them $1 and says, I just don't want to see you again. Okay, gracias.
Nelson loved being a clown.
And I've never been able to take real offense at being called a clown because this is a pretty honorable thing. You know, there's a long tradition of clowns. This puts you in Mark Twain's league.
Well, Fearless Frank was a movie. I was just sort of interested in the American comic book. He sort of created the role of Needles, one of the sidekicks. We had fun. No, we had fun with Nelson. He had a great time.
See, the thing about Nelson to me is that he's a lyric writer, and his prose is really poetry, and he writes about those who may be clown figures. It's a reflection of ourselves in every way.
Dear Mr. Algren, I am about finished with a book about the Hells Angels, and I find I have injected a large part of the opening of A Walk on the Wild Side. The stuff is too good to paraphrase.
One of the unfortunate misapprehensions people have about serious literature is that it has to be serious.
Walk on the Wild Side is a great comic novel. If you think of Huckleberry Finn and Mark Twain, I think he's very much in the Twain mode in Walk on the Wild Side.
The Walk on the Wild Side, which is an out-and-out farce in many ways, but it's a form of humor that's there to humanize people.
The cops and the criminals and the lowlives live in this same world, and they have to put up with each other all the time. So they've developed a kind of rough humor and language between themselves.
Do we laugh with these characters who see the comic absurd nature of their own situations, or do we laugh at them and objectify them and push them away from us?
Dove Lincoln, this big raw-boned kid out of Kentucky, is basically an Ozarkian. He's a doofus, he's a naive, and he gets caught in all kinds. He thinks he's a hustler. And all the characters in Walk on the Wild Side they're not admirable, but he loved them.
Finnerty, who looked like one of those Australian foxes with ears half the length of its body, claimed to be 5 foot, but had to be wearing cowboy boots to make good on the post. Aiken Chopper's giving me trouble again, he would complain of the girl who had been with him longest, the moon-faced Chicago blonde. I know she's been faithful as a broad can be, but her teeth give me trouble. It's a new plate near every month. I'm supporting half the dentists in town. If you'd stop busting her in the mouth, you wouldn't have to support that many, the mulatto woman once called Lucille suggested.
I remember he told me he made $15,000 for The Man with the Golden Arm with Preminger, and he got $25,000 for A Walk on the Wild Side. Now, both films were sort of travesties of his work.
Most writers are not too happy with what happens to them in their movies.
He was having a classic experience of a novelist, a literary novelist goes to Hollywood. Well, don't go with any expectations. Hemingway said that what you should do is you should drive to the Nevada-California border and throw your book across and let them throw the money back and then turn around and drive back east.
Dear Mr. Algren, I hope you don't think I'm too forward, but I just seen your picture in the paper, and it says you are eligible. I also. And being of a different sex, I hope maybe we could get together. I know this sounds just horrible for a decent girl to talk this way, but after all, it is leap year, and you know what they say, faint heart never won a husband.
Oh, he would go to New York and hang out with whores and stuff. He liked that. Said it was pleasant. Made him happy. Nice for a Wednesday afternoon.
The multilingual Brazilian? He rhapsodized about her beauty, but more than anything else about her intellect. And I guess she was a great whore.
I mean, I remember coming up to Nelson's one time, ringing a bell downstairs, and coming up, and his pants were down by his knees, and he said, "Oh, she said she was coming back." He thought. So, I mean, he was looking for fun.
It came time to order dessert, and I said, they had Cherry's Jubilee on the menu, and I said, oh, I've never had that. I'll have Cherry's Jubilee. And then these old guys started making fun of me, like, oh, Cherry's Jubilee, like, she's a virgin, ha, 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 she's so young, ha, ha, ha. And I'm thinking, this is really rude. And then Algren's going out about something or other, and Cherry's Jubilee. And so I just picked up that whipped cream, and I just took it, and I just smashed him in the face. And he goes like, whoa. And he turns to me and he says, well, honey, what's your name again? And I said, well, it's Denise. And he said, when you get to Chicago, you just come and look me up.
He said, there's a woman I know in the East Bay. Why don't you go have dinner with her? I think you guys would like to see her. She said she wrote Nelson a big fan letter, and she showed me what he sent back, which was this kind of fold-out huge thing of a penis that he had drawn. And he was saying, this is actual size. I mean, he was bold. He loved women. He knew how to make them laugh.
He would have women as friends, and not necessarily need to roll around with them.
This whole thing about Mr. Misogynistic, I'm a tough guy, guys guy, I just think that was kind of bull.
I was writing an article for Cosmopolitan about hookers in Chicago, and it was so depressing, and I got very upset about it for some reason. He was having a party that night at his house, and I said, I just don't think I can do it anymore. And I think I started crying, but he just put his arms around me and he said, you know that I would do anything to help you, and you know that I care about you. And I thought there is something very touching about Nelson when he's sweet, because a lot of the time he just liked to pretend that he didn't have that side to him.
You just know that women who knew him intimately, could see the beauty of the man and his intellect.
He was not a woman's liver, for starters, but Betty Friedan, actually, they got along. She used to drive him around town in Sag Harbor because he didn't get around, so she would pick him up in her car, but she was this little thing driving, and she could hardly see over the dashboard. She takes a turn, and the door was not quite locked, and Nelson fell out of the car.
She's driving so slowly that Nelson runs and catches up to the car and grabs onto the door and jumps into the car and says, Betty. She turned and looked at him and she said, what's wrong? He said, Betty, I just fell out of the damn car.
Loneliness is the thing that makes the writer. If he doesn't want to feel lonely, let him get a family and go into insurance and get a home in the suburbs. And nothing wrong with that, but you have to give up something.
He was daring. He wrote about things that other people didn't want to write about. The Walk on the Wild Side. He did write about the wild side and the dark end of the street.
The great writers of any time have always been those who took the part of the individual against society, the writers who brought society down from the bench into the dock.
Algren never learned how to drive a car. He had a $4 Schwinn bike that had been stolen from his building. He had a certificate, a little card from the police, but this got Nelson into the police show up at Leventon State. But Algren kept coming using this ticket until it wore out. And he took Simone there, he took me there, he took Norman Mailer there. Norman Mailer once said, these sound just like the people in your book. And Nelson always thought that was pretty funny, that Mailer never made the real connection that these were the people in his book.
I went with Nelson from time to time to these lineups. And, the stories of a lot of these, no one's ever guilty of anything. No one ever did it. They were framed. It was a big game, as Nelson points out, between the captain who's leading the lineup and the guys who are brought up, who are about to, be put into the lineup to be ID'd for a crime.
The criminal class can tell you more about criminology than all the professors, that these people are useful, and that isolating them is not only degrading to them, but harmful to society.
We're in the kitchen at the kitchen table, and we're reading, all of us reading a paper, and he stops at the story where A family with 2 children stopped to pick up a hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker killed the 4 of them, murdered the 4 of them. And there's a picture of the hitchhiker. He's got his hands up like this, and on his 4 knuckles it said, "Hard luck." So Nelson said, "Oh God, that is so tragic. That is so." I said, "It is tragic, this good family picking up a hitchhiker." He said, "No, I'm thinking of the man himself who saw his life as so troubled that he had hard luck tattooed on his fingers." I was so mad at him, picked up the paper, hit him on the head. It was the first time I think I ever heard anybody say about the murderer, "Oh, I feel so sorry for him."
I have a friend out in the South Side, a man about 32, a Negro fellow who did a lot of time between the time he was 11, 9, 13 years old up to the time until he was 30. And he said one interesting thing. He said, "The only time I ever felt human was when I was in jail."
The need to retain dignity. For those who weren't able to articulate in their own way, there was a way he could uphold that dignity in the way he contextualized his characters.
Like the girl in this courtroom situation couldn't be provided a lawyer. She looked around and said, "Well, ain't anybody on my side."
By telling the truth about the human condition for those people in his neighborhoods in Chicago, he pointed out the contradictions.
He had this basic American thing of, I don't think people are getting a square deal. And most of them don't know how to get out of that, and there may not be a way out of that, but the game is rigged.
Algren was able to talk about social issues, and he had a conscience that dealt with how is the little guy being treated, which goes back to who's doing the work, who makes things.
But he played an important political role, and he told the truth about those people in his neighborhood, people that he knew intimately, people's lives that he saw going down the drain. Everything isn't as it seems in America. Well, it's not so grand for everybody. And if we're about all that, why don't we do something about helping these people?
It wasn't that he was just interested in down and out people, but he thought the whole country was unfair and that so many people had so little. I mean, I think he would certainly roll his eyes at today. It's only gotten worse.
After 4 years of bliss, the romance was falling apart.
Algren wanted Simone to move to Chicago and marry him.
But Simone, she was in the classic triangle. Her heart was with Nelson, but her head was with Sartre. She broke his heart.
She promised him, after they'd been apart for a year, that she would go on a 4-month trip with him. After, if I understand this right, less than 6 weeks into that trip, she informed him that Sartre desperately missed her and it was imperative that she leave. Now, that pissed Algren off.
And when her novel The Mandarins comes out in 1956, and it's a lightly fictionalized version of their affair, he's a character called Louis Brogan, he reacts really vehemently.
Nelson's review in Harper's is a classic of retaliatory reviewing. His famous line was, "I think the lady invaded her own privacy."
And she wrote a couple books that caused me to sever the relationship. I haven't seen her for many years now. I had to sever the relationship.
Basically, he felt betrayed by her, that she exploited their personal relationship for literary or commercial gain.
She said, "How could you do this to me? Weren't we in such great love? Didn't you think the sex was marvelous?" And then Nelson said to me proudly, he said, "I told her I wasn't reviewing the fucking sex. I was reviewing the fucking book."
Oh, man, they keep asking me about that stupid French school teacher.
Which French school teacher?
The Beauvoir. I'm tired of hearing about
Simone de
her.
Beauvoir.
I don't even remember.
What? You don't remember
I
her?
remember her a little bit.
I don't believe you.
No. Well, I haven't seen her for 40 years. I wouldn't even remember her picture.
But
what
that
she
was a
looked like.
big thing, you know.
No, it was not a big thing.
No?
She made a big thing out of nothing.
At one point, I was in his bedroom, his rather ramshackle apartment in Hackensack, and I said, "Do you have?" You know, they wrote letters. I said, "Do you have the letters?" He says, "Oh yeah, I got about 300 letters here in the drawer." It was in his bedroom drawer, and I said to him, knowing a little bit about literary value, I said, "Why don't you sell her letters?" And he looked at me, questioning, "Sell it? Why would I sell her letters?" You know, it was unthinkable.
But didn't she use you? I mean, she made you famous. She wrote you in all these, put you in all these books.
No, she didn't make me famous. She really didn't. No, whatever fame, if you want to call it that, I got independently.
He always said she was a woman who invaded her own privacy, and even a prostitute closes the door behind her. You know, when you say something like that about a woman that you once loved passionately, you know there's a lot of anger and a lot of hurt there.
I don't have, so far as I know, a literary image to live up to. I hope not. I don't know. If I have, it's a wrong one, you know. But a lot of writers, Norman Mailer, Saul Bellow, John Updike, have certain literary... Hemingway had a tremendous literary image, which is completely false. But the reason I don't have it is because I don't need it.
Within 10 years, nobody was reading Algren.
He did not know how to exploit his reputation.
All of Algren's work was packaged and sold like it was pulp fiction of one kind or another. So a reader who wouldn't know anything about Algren might go to the spinning rack of paperbacks in the newsstand and find a Nelson Algren book with a cover exactly like a potboiler about a junkie right next to it.
He wasn't a self-promoter. The sentences didn't usually have the word I in them.
You have to be something of a misfit to go into writing in the United States.
He didn't live in New York. He didn't play the media.
The American writer, as often as not, is a middle-aged man with a wife and children, 2 or 3 books behind him, and $11 in his pocket. And he's up against a conglomerate that deals in millions. He will take what they offer.
I think Nelson, in many ways, was much more comfortable with the people in his neighborhood.
And you put him in a context like a big university with slightly stuffy manners and so forth, or around academic people, and he had to make it clear to them and to himself that he was not one of them.
And it was probably as much that, his rejection of the powers that be, that caused them to reject him.
You know, we both love that bitch goddess success on the one hand, and want to be embraced by her, but on the other hand, we have to constantly push her away in order to maintain our honesty and our objectivity and our integrity.
One of the underrated aspects of Algren's late career is the way he participated in the new journalism movement of the 50s and 60s and 70s. Once his fiction career was ended, in his own mind even, by the changes in American literary culture, he had to make a living, and he was a writer, and he had a degree in journalism. So he would write these travel pieces and these think pieces and these political essays and book reviews.
Of course, he had vowed never to go to Vietnam. You know, it was a political outrage, etc. He He's got a job with the Atlantic. And then all of a sudden he's going to Vietnam.
Some kid was picked up on a bicycle going through Saigon with a bomb. He was going to blow up a hotel or a PX, whatever he came to. The position we put him in, he has to bomb the PX in order to feel he's a man. And although he's a beggar fighting against rich men, powerfully armed, he knows also, his advantage is that he knows he's as good as dead. He's probably lost his brothers. He's probably seen his mother shipped somewhere else. His sister's probably a whore in Saigon. He has nothing to lose.
You could have dropped that guy anywhere, and he would have found those people there. He could have been writing about the Maldives or the guys digging mines in South Africa. He would have found those people. He had a special affinity for those people.
He immediately gets involved in the black market. So you could pick up TV for 1/10 of its cost here and sell it for more in the black market. So he managed to do this for, 6-8 months before the competitors became a little impatient. So they knocked his teeth out. Then he came home.
The question is, will you miss Chicago? No, I've never missed Chicago. No, I mean, I don't, Chicago, and I don't think Chicago's going to miss me.
Nelson felt that Chicago was finished with him. He wasn't making a living here.
He got fed up with it. He thought it was a political mess, and he wasn't getting what he wanted out of Chicago. Chicago wasn't recognizing him.
I mean, I went up to the public library the other day. Let's see, I've written 10, 11 books, and there isn't one there. They are in Tokyo.
I think Nelson left because he just had it. Here he's living in a bust-out flat. Nobody knows who he is. He couldn't walk into more than, maybe 2 restaurants or bars and get himself a good table. Writers don't get free meals after they've done their best work.
Oh, I miss him. Yeah, when Nelson will miss the city, I don't know. But certainly that number of people, quite a few people in Chicago will miss Nelson, quite obviously.
But he was the prophet in his own land who couldn't make a profit.
No send-off, no kisses, not even his friend Studs. Nobody at all. He just left. He said he would. He did. On the Broadway Limited, 4 o'clock out of Union Station. And Chicago lost a poet, even if Chicago didn't notice.
He said, I'm leaving all the furniture. I said, I want your desk. And he said, you're making a big mistake. It's the bed. You should be getting a lot more happen on the bed. I said, I want the desk. And I got it. I got the desk.
More than 60 years he had in this town, and stories, books, Man with a Golden Arm, City on the Make. But Chicago never cared about all that, he said, and so Algren doesn't care right back. But still, those books practically made love to this city, and once he even wrote about Chicago dividing your heart and leaving you loving the joint for keeps.
Oh, to say you gotta love it for keeps, it's like, being married to a woman, and then 25 years later, she's a mess.
Yes, Algren was a Chicago writer, but his books and his stories are universal.
There are side street bars that burn all night, blue oases and deserts of pavement and rail. Between the pretzel bowl and the pinball machine, wait nobodies, nobody knows. Waiting for the wind to die down or the rain to cease, a World Series to start and a score to come in, for snow to stop falling or a day to end. There are blue oases that burn all night in deserts of pavement between rail and rail, where nobody knows, wait the whole night long, each for his own lifelong life to begin.
The stories about why he left Chicago are legion, but the practical reason was he got an assignment from Esquire magazine to cover the Hurricane Reuben Carter trial.
On the evidence that Algren saw, he felt the guy was being railroaded. So he decided to move to New Jersey, work on that story. He would get a little money from Esquire and then take his chances.
The bandwagon started with Bob Dylan and having benefits for Carter. And Nelson had nothing to do with it.
I think it kind of wore him out. And all of a sudden, it was all about Norman Mailer. That's always happened to Nelson. He would get interested in something or care about something, and then pretty soon along would come the stars. I don't think that pleased him.
And then there was 2 trials, and Carter was found guilty both times. He called me from the courtroom. I think he was almost in tears, because he had just seen 4 or 5 years of his life just drained away completely.
With his Hurricane Reuben Carter experience in terms of Esquire's story, they didn't want to publish it. So he decided eventually to turn it into a novel.
So I start all over now with a book called The Devil's Stocking, which everybody who is not in the literary establishment thinks is great, and everybody in the literary establishment says no way.
Nelson just looked completely frazzled and spooked, terrified. They wanted him to have heart surgery, and he refused. He says, look, nobody must know about this, nobody.
So he said, well, you know, I had a heart attack. I was in the hospital. I said, how was that? Oh, well, it's nothing. Told me to be careful, I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. He looked perfectly awful, and there really was nothing you could do to get him to, you know, take care of himself.
And then Oliver, he just relapsed into his habits of denial. What heart attack, he'd say. I just had a cold.
So he had a little place in Long Island.
There was a literary community out in Sag Harbor and the East Coast that was at the point revering Nelson, sort of having rediscovered him out there. You know, his best buddies out there are William Styron.
Ed Vonnegut and Irwin Shaw and Peter Matheson and all of the notables living in Sag Harbor.
He loved meeting all the people that were out here and having parties.
And I had no idea that he had had a heart attack the year before. He just sort of leapt into a new phase of his life.
There is this wonderful bookstore in Sag Harbor that he frequented and that really did embrace him. And he used to do readings there. People would crowd in to hear him read. And he loved that kind of small community that was really into what he had to offer.
When he came here, you could see that he was so happy. He used to say, I never dreamed I would be able to eat every day and look at the water. He loved it. He was ecstatic.
And he charged admission at that bookstore. Some people were really offended by this, but what he did with that ultimately is he took that money, and that was the money that he was going to use to throw this party for the very people who came and heard him read and who paid money. I thought that was really incredible.
The climax was his last party in 1980.
And he had a party for me. He called all his friends, Gloria Jones, Peter Matheson, many others. He thanked me and called me the man who broke his losing streak.
And he seized the stage and told some wonderful and sometimes nonsensical stories.
We ate our food. He made this toast. He had champagne. It was so sweet. his new life and these new friends, this new place, you knew he was just very happy.
Hello.
We just talked on the phone, and he told me about how much fun he was having and how busy he was. And he made a lot of fun about the American Academy and saying, well, of course, it didn't matter. It was too late, and it was stupid anyway.
You know, it was a moment of recognition.
Nelson was going to be admitted into the American Academy of Arts and Letters.
He asked Gloria Jones, he claimed he didn't know what it was. And she told him, oh, you're in now. It's like the Legion of Honor. He said he was going to wear a tutu, I think, to the affair. I said, well, you're going to have a rough time getting it over your belly. So Nelson said to me, oh, I'll make a party. Come on out and I'll make a party.
He was going to have his party to celebrate.
He had called me up the day before. I said, Joe, I want you to come early to help me get ready.
We drove out to Sag Harbor.
All these literary people were coming to his house that morning.
And I go to a public phone booth to tell Nelson, hey, I'm in town, I'm gonna drive, see you. And the phone rings, and it's not Nelson who answers the phone. It's Roy Feiner.
If anyone was Nelson's son, it was Roy, the detective.
Roy Feiner was a New York City homicide detective. And the first thing he says to me, I said, hi, this is Jan. Don't come. I said, I'm here. Don't come.
He comes out and says, Joe, because I had met him before, don't go in. It's not pretty.
But I jumped into the car and I drove to the house and I go into the apartment, into that salt box house that he had, and there is Roy, red-eyed, and there's Nelson on the bathroom floor.
And his wristwatch was smashed against the radiator and stopped at the time that it happened. He had a heart attack, apparently.
We went to the grave site, which was a quiet but very nice site in this little cemetery. And the thing that I remember most about that, even though wonderful things were read and said at the grave site, was when people were starting to leave, this beautiful woman came walking up.
Like this woman, Regina, that showed up in gold shoes and this black lace dress with long red hair, who told me that he literally paid for her graduate work. She became a writer. She wanted to become a writer. She was the most gorgeous creature. I mean, the most gorgeous creature you ever saw. And she's standing there in the grass at the cemetery and like crying.
The light was catching her hair. And I said, my God, Nelson's angel has come.
Again that hour when taxis are deadheading home, before the trolley buses start to run, when snow dreams in a lace of mist drift down, now from asylum, barrack, cell, and cheap hotel, all those whose lives were lived by someone else, who never had a choice but went on what was left, return along old walks where thrusts of grass by strength of love have cracked the measured stone.
Society was willing to let people lie on the streets, and Nelson wanted to hear the music that was going through their heads.